right, welcome back. I'm Michael Stamatinos, your host for the Advancing Healthcare Innovation Show. And if you're new to us, we're just incredibly passionate about healthcare innovation and adoption. And our aim is to bring real stories of real people that are really innovating within the environment. And it just, look, we've got an incredibly action-packed year. If you haven't looked at any previous episodes, just encourage you to go back and take a look. And we've got new content that's coming out constantly, and it's just some amazing interviews planned, especially for the coming new year. So I want to encourage you, wherever you are, when you're consuming this content, hit the subscribe now button, and the content will come directly to you. So without further ado, I'm delighted to have Nirny Patel, who is the head of enterprise digital transformation and digital platform for Blue Cross Blue Shield. Nirny, welcome to the show.
Hey, Michael, thank you. Thank you for having us. And you folks have put a really good content, so I highly encourage the viewers to hit the subscribe button. Super interesting content on the innovation front.
Awesome. So we've been it's been an interesting last, just call it 18 to 24 months, and the payer provider space. I don't think that there's been, really the speed of adoption innovation has been happening at record rates. And I'd love to maybe just kind of get your thoughts around, number one, how do you define innovation in sort of the seat that you're in right now? And if you want, you can maybe just share with the audience a little bit about sort of what you guys are focused on, a little bit of your background for those that don't know, and then kind of maybe segue into that question and work our way in.
Yeah. As a head of digital transformation at HCSC, we operate Blue Cross in 5 states. We have about 17 million members we serve. In my role, I'm responsible for the digital products, the web-facing, member-facing web and mobile, as well as the digital platform and the overall digital strategy for the organization. And innovation is really something which has gotten a lot more focus. Perhaps the only silver lining coming out of pandemic we are all in. What used to be more of a side projects are now getting a much more mainstream attention, both on the payer and provider space. So super excited about the inflection points within the healthcare in the coming years. There are two sides of the innovation I am particularly focused on in my role. There is a lot of innovation around customer centricity, on how we can focus more on the experience, end-to-end experience of the customer as they navigate the healthcare ecosystem. And then there is also a lot of innovation about kind of platforms and ecosystems and arrangements, right? So how can we empower these channels, omni-channels, by having a very strong platform play where scale is an advantage for us, right? We are using our scale to not create more bottlenecks, but to actually learn more about how we can improve experiences for our members.
Well, thanks for sharing that. So speaking of bottlenecks, how do you guys figure out when bottlenecks occur? What's the process like internally to figure out where the kinks are in the system? Can you maybe share a little bit about that? Obviously, we don't want you to share anything that's confidential, but to the extent that you can share.
Yeah, I think there are various kind of levels of bottlenecks, if you will. If you think about kind of most of the traditional organization have a very linear kind of value chain model, right? Where you have a member-facing application, but behind the scenes, you have pretty much a lot of the functions within the organizations kind of linearly threaded. And what happens is when you have a customer or a member surge with respect to more utilization, more engagement, you not only have to accommodate for those bottlenecks more from an infrastructure standpoint, which is probably the easier part, but you have to also understand how digitized is your entire value chain, right? Because the more manual processes, the more manual intervention you have in your value chain, those bottlenecks are going to show up now to accommodate for that surge. So I think having an end-to-end experiential view on having all of the data points kind of connected and having a very good understanding of the maturity level of each one of those Lego blocks. I think it's important. Often you also would found that your experience within your applications and experiences you have built is meant and built for that level of capacity and surge. But if you are handing that over to maybe an external vendor, perhaps they are not on the same innovation parity as you are.
Mm.
And now you identify that second, third, fourth degree of bottleneck. So you got to own the whole experience end to end. And whether you're renting, buying, or building, there needs to be certain constants, experience, design, scale. These constants in today's economy are non-negotiable.
So if there was one that you were to select from experience, design, and scale, is there one that has a little bit more weight if you were to kind of prioritize those three, or are they all equally weighted?
I think they all play with each other. I feel that when we talk about digital, which is a very broad word, but if we put that into context of current businesses, in my opinion, it's about innovating on customer centricity and building solutions and products and services which are built to scale, which allows you to take advantage of networking effects, right? Which allows you to do more for your users, and it creates more value with more users you add. So I think those are the two areas where you would find, think about model of Uber, right, and Amazon. Like these are, you have a platform and a highly customer-centric product and solutions offering, which separates and kind of shapes your customer expectations. So I feel that they all kind of play into each other and they all are important at an equal level.
You sort of touched on digital, and I'd be remiss if I didn't bring this up. In one of our earlier conversations, you had talked about the difference between technology and digital. Can you sort of share some of your insights with the audience about the clear separation between those two, or moreover, how they sort of interplay with each other? So if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and sort of share about that.
Yeah, that was a great conversation. Yeah, I'm asked that question a lot. And when I went to my business school, that's when I started answering this question a lot more. And as I reflected upon the word digital, in a purest sense, it's an application of technology. And then, growing up, my know-how and the first, first memory of digital is around digital cameras, which we all used to use. And, I think that's a very good example, because digital camera was a piece of technology which was put in place. And digital businesses is the industry of images and photography, which is a very different kind of a value proposition. If Instagram is valued at $100 billion, and Kodak is at probably $1 billion right now, they were the first one to create digital cameras. But the digitalization, like having an end-to-end digital business model and having a platform and a customer-centric offering, that kind of separates the technology, right, from the digital. So again, I think in my opinion, technology, is the science, and digital is really applying these various pieces of technology which are relevant today, and they're going to keep changing every year, right? Computing and storage is much more cheaper today. And as we move through edge and 5G, that's going to be another frontier of technology. So how you can stay continually relevant with digital technologies and innovate on your end-to-end business model. And I think that's what differentiates digital and technology in kind of the context of modern businesses today.
Mm-hmm. And let's just talk about for a second, you mentioned about making sure that external innovations coming in, that you guys are on the same page. What are some of those things that you think about when you are evaluating an external innovation and thinking about bringing it in?
Yeah, I think there is kind of various frontiers of it. Um, I think the wave which we are all in right now is, regardless of what industry or what businesses you are in, chances are that your customers are creating immense data footprints. You're all swimming in data. And I think the current wave is what do you do with that data, right? And I think that's where, what do you do with that data, healthcare data in a healthcare industry versus a B2C or a retail or a CPG or entertainment industry. But that's kind of the current wave where we are in, where uh, predicting predictive behavior creates customer value. And those experiences are shaped by the usage of, Google Maps or Uber, where algorithms are making decisions, right, on a very predictive basis. And it creates immense user value, which kind of brings them to their products and services. So how can some of those concepts, right, how can you use those predictive value creation opportunities for your businesses? So I think there's an innovation curve there where your customer is already there. You have a sizable data, internal or external. And I think it's your ability to use that data to create value for your customer, kind of creates a value proposition and a differentiation opportunity. And then there is obviously a second and third degree of innovations, right? Where things like blockchain, for example, if you are seeing more and more critical mass coming towards a shared contract, more more automated interoperability kind of a platform, then those are the other things, right? Which as it gains more critical mass, they can be very disruptive. IoT is another one where certain use cases, you want to keep an eye on that and the data footprint it creates to kind of truly create more of an omni-channel experience for your members. So I think it all depends on where your customers are, what industry you are in,
Yeah.
and where you go from data AI wave to some of the other innovation curves, which are a little second, third degree.
Well, I would imagine that it depends on sort of the size and scale of the problem that you're trying to solve, and maybe the speed in which you're trying to solve it is just given the extensive resources that I would imagine that you guys have exposure to. Is there ever an instance where you say, you know what, we can totally take this in-house, and then has there been an instance where you've decided to take it in-house and then you're like, oh boy, I think we kind of bit off a little bit more than we can chew? Do you mind, maybe even sharing some examples if that has ever occurred, and then what did you do to sort of rectify it?
Yeah, I think it's all very relative to an organization, the industry they're operating in, where your customers are, and everything in between. Um, uh, we would say that within Blue Cross, we have an innovation. We have an innovation unit which is exploring with a lot of these ideas. And there is, the exploration and kind of the go-to-market commercialization are two very different things, right? And you may want to start, and again, you want to innovate, and it's a very fail fast, fail cheap, right? Learn from it kind of posture. But as soon as you have a signal, strong signal, where some of those innovations can kind of graduate into
Mm-hmm.
a mainstream, more of a scaled uh, value use case, you wanna kind of jump on those signals, right, and try to see how you can fit into your product or a platform. A good example is around everything around AI, right? Um, uh, how you develop AI and machine learning is very different than traditional software development. You do a lot of you have this toolbox of various algorithms. You're going to use that for either predicting or classifying things for your machine learning, and you will be looking at a lot of metrics to find signal. And as soon as you find a strong signal, you try that with more and more training data. And as that signal becomes much more stronger, now you can start thinking about, okay, how can I introduce this, right, to some of the applications we have? And that innovation curve is just super exciting because you have so much data, but in order for you to use that data, there's a lot of exploration going on before you can go full throttle wide scale. So I hope that helps as an example.
Yeah, it sounds like you're mitigating risk. If you're going to be failing, you want to fail in a safer environment. You don't want to fail at scale, because that might mean, your job. So your job is obviously to be able to essentially, sounds like, you're thinking in bets. Okay, let's take this small bet. Let's do it in this environment. Let's learn from it. If it goes well, okay, great. Now we kind of graduated. Whereas, you don't just take it and then all of a sudden just deploy it. That just wouldn't really be a good way of moving things along. I'm wondering, just because, just being a consumer, being someone who has insurance, I have to say that the experience in general is oftentimes when you're going to, a Blue Cross Blue Shield website, there's a lot going on there. Talk me through, me as a consumer, and knowing that you had mentioned that, having a consumer-centric approach. What does the future look like, when it comes to someone trying to orientate themselves to finding resources, trying to find doctors, because it just seems as though it's just a pain in the neck. Do we have any hope for the future? And if so, please share with us a little bit, behind the curtain of what some of that hope looks like.
Yeah. Well, all these pains are incredible opportunities, right? And and the team gets excited, right? So that's the job and that's the mission. I think that every member has their own kind of needs of when, how they engage um, with our ecosystem. And I think really the goal is to meet our members where they want us to meet. So we see a lot of traffic on our web channel, for example, and again, that traffic comes from various different areas. Some are internal, some are external. And we also have seen with the pandemic a huge surge into our mobile application usage. So there is a lot of focus on how we kind of move from a multi-channel to an omni-channel footprint. So instead of operating in all the channels, we want to start a conversation and continue that across. And that happens, and that speaks to, that speaks to me, that certainly speaks to a lot of people, right? Like you're probably commuting, you start a conversation digitally, you find a space and a time, more space and time, and you probably perhaps call in between, you're also chatting maybe. And I think we are finding these slices of time, and each slice of time has its own value proposition. Mobile needs to be in and out, quick and easy.
Yeah, it's transactional.
It's transactional, right? Web, maybe you will download your EOBs. You will take a little bit more time to look at it. And call, you would like to understand it. It kind of brings you to more of an education literacy aspect of it, or you have a very specific issue which we are trying to solve. So I think each time slice has its own kind of value proposition, and you got to focus on that from a customer design standpoint. So we're very excited about we're putting a lot of emphasis on customer experience score, for example. In these time slices, are our members, what's the effort for our member to do what they want to do kind of quick in and out? Because that's a success criteria, right? And there's a huge correlation of having a good NPS target, right? If we are able to do that. So I think that's, to answer your question, we want to do that across all channels. We want each channel to kind of play to its strength. And I think the sum of all parts, right, is obviously going to be larger here.
Not even just the end consumer, but also the providers that you interact with. I mean, there's a big problem around, and you're seeing it now with prior authorizations and things of that nature. Are you seeing any bridges being built, with providers or little wins around innovation that you think are speeding up things that normally take a lot of time? I just have a number of friends that are providers, and they're telling me horror stories around staff that they're deploying to wait on hold, to trying to kind of get through to the payers that they work with. I'm curious how much of that is a focus, versus sort of the end member, because ultimately, the paying member, you want to make sure that their experience is pleasant. And yet at the same time, the providers that essentially, they're your partners as well. I'd be curious to understand how much of this customer-centric is that, customer number one, and then maybe customer number two, which is also a provider. Talk a little bit about that and share what you can around those areas.
Yeah. I think it's been my personal thesis, right, on that, like the whole payer provider. And I talk to my provider friends. I think a good common denominator is engaging with your members or your patients in an acute setting, an ambulatory setting, or a preventative care setting.
Yeah.
There are three boxes at a very, very macro level, right? And I think the value propositions of these three boxes are very different, right? In an acute setting, it's a very personal, time sensitive, stakes are super high kind of decisions. In an ambulatory setting, you have a little bit more of an education, literacy, kind of wellness, preventative. And then there is everything else, which how can we continue, right, to be more preventative in nature. So I think when I talk to my provider friends today, I think they are thinking much more broadly now, right, in all three areas. And I think it's if you just do a very simple math with respect to number of doctors we have and the care team around the doctors, and on the other side, the number of engagements you will have to make with a particular patient in all these three areas, I think the math's not gonna work out. And I think that's where digital engagement kind of comes into play. The platform and these engagements can scale, but they can also scale in a very personalized manner. So I can engage with Michael very differently than Nirny, because Michael is perhaps a urban Chicago user and Nirny is maybe a rural Montana user. The way of engagement in those three settings is very different. So again, when we say meet your customers where they are, it's really where they are. There is a lot of, and we are just talking about the core demography here. If you add like social determinants on top of it, right? If you add about the family history aspect of it, like you can just add layers and layers of it. Providers have really good episodic data and first mile of action with their members, and payers have more of a longitudinal data.
Yeah,
you actually need both if you have to truly operate in each one of these three buckets. So that's very exciting to kind of see a lot of provider momentum on the digital side as well as payer, and I think these both views can only benefit our members.
So in a perfect world, if you were to kind of wave your magic wand on this situation and you wanted to see a seamless interaction between a provider, a payer, and then equating to sort of a quality patient member experience, what do you think are some of the biggest roadblockers that need to be sort of removed first and foremost?
Well, I'm super excited about the interoperability. I feel that the fluidity of data, it opens a world full of innovation. If you look at just digital therapeutics, right, alone, and the VC investment back-to-back year, post-COVID has been, I see the raised eyebrows, Michael.
Record breaking.
Right, 15 billion back-to-back years. And, if you look at App Store, a good exercise I did at one of our family friend reunion. So there are about 48,000 healthcare apps in App Store. 48,000. And then, I asked around how many apps a sample of 20 to 25 people use, right? And you will find, you'll be surprised, it was about 40 to 50 apps. So now, the innovation, right, for a healthcare is here. It's perhaps not evenly distributed across the entire population, and that holds very true. The data fluidity, it helps with the distribution aspect of it. I think you will find a very condition-specific innovation where somebody is just trying to do a very, end-to-end experience for a prenatal event, right? End-to-end experience for a type 2 diabetic, right? Like, I think there's just a lot of innovation going on there. But the fluidity of the data is going to allow us to kind of thread them all together. And that layer of innovation, I think, is really important. So, the magic wand is going to be a highly interoperable ecosystem where data is a leveling field, right? And what you do with the data, it really, every firm, right, will be competing on creating more value for their consumers on a level data field. And I think Interop has a big role to play in it.
First off, I'm in complete alignment with what you shared there, and I think it's what we all want. And as a result of having 48,000 apps, there's quite a few apps. Number one, do you see healthcare consumers experiencing any type of app fatigue, meaning they're apped out, there's too many apps, there's always an app for one thing, and it's like, before you know it, personally for me, I like to keep things really simple. I don't want to have 100 applications. It's just too much to do. Is there a way to really have access to all of these? And maybe that interoperability that you shared about is sort of the key to have access to so many things, but to have them maybe only going through one particular channel where it's just sort of the trusted source. And maybe perhaps what you're talking about digitizing the experience and having a full end-to-end experience is really where they go to. Like, you're sort of the single source of truth where a member goes to, and then that's sort of where they get sort of triaged and placed into all these other different areas. I don't know, I'm just throwing that out there, that it seems like there's a lot of apps and a lot of noise, a lot of ways to get distracted.
Yeah, totally. I think app fatigue is real, but the other thing I'm thinking about is like the apps which gets used the most provides a very, very high degree of value for that particular customer.
Yeah.
And you have a high degree of trust. I'm going to say, if you scroll down your iOS and Siri does a great job in recommending you apps, the apps it would recommend, chances are you trust those organizations and the business you're doing with them. And they are creating immense value for you, maybe in that hour, maybe in that year, because you happened to go to the school, right? Like that it creates immense value for you and you trust them. And I feel that needs to be core to every businesses. You need to focus on creating a lot of value for your customers, and you need to build trust over a period of time. And to me, I mean to say, you cannot stop the proliferation of the apps, but you can certainly work harder, right, on creating more value for your customers and bring innovation to the forefront. So you continually kind of meet their expectation and then keep that trust with your brand. And then your app, right, is going to show up on the Siri recommendation for your customers. You don't have to worry about the 48,000 other apps, right, which are competing with you.
Totally. Well, it's been really fun to just chat with you and mix it up here a little bit, and just sort of as we kind of get into sort of our final finish here. And just want to ask you just maybe one or two more questions. Is number one is how can people sort of follow your work? How can they interact, engage, especially, for me personally, I engage with a number of different digital health startups, many of which would dream to have the logo of a Blue Cross Blue Shield, as a customer, as a client. And we know there's a lot of factors, a lot of things that go into that, but what's the best way to kind of even start an initial conversation, to engage with someone within BCBS, which is a massive organization? Any little tips and tricks there would be greatly appreciated by the audience.
Yeah, I think there are various ways of engaging with our organization. We operate very locally. in the local market. So, we have Illinois, Texas, Montana, Oklahoma, New Mexico. So again, if you're engaging at a local level, highly encourage you to kind of contact our local offices and kind of start a conversation there. I feel that we are also very present in the community events. We are also present in healthcare conferences. So again, I think a lot of the folks, I've met personally, has been in one of those, right? Because now you are creating a very
Yeah.
shared ground, right, to exchange how entities can help each other. So I think those are some of the ways I would say that
Yeah.
there is not a one stop or a one door entry, right? I think it all depends on how you want to engage, where you want to engage, and what's the value proposition.
Awesome. Yeah, I'd say the theme for this show for me is, you said it in the beginning, which is, and you said it a couple different times, is meet the customer, meet people where they're at. And the reality is that some are a little bit more advanced than others. And not everyone is all going to be placed into one particular bucket. So how you illustrated those different buckets, those subsegments, just goes to show that not only are you saying it, you guys are really trying to live it and do it. And I just want to applaud you for that, because the amount of members that you are catering to and doing this at scale and trying to keep as many of the members happy and satisfied is by no stretch an easy task at hand. It's a very difficult task at hand. So thank you for the work that you're doing. And one of the other last question is as innovators, innovation is around doing and trialing and testing. You talked about it earlier about fail quickly. What is the one, if there's one take that you want to have some of the audience members take and apply, what would that one golden nugget be?
Yeah, I would say that focusing on customer centricity and platform within your innovation quadrant, I feel that it's inevitable and it's almost a strategic imperative for most businesses, more so in healthcare post-pandemic. And I think that the pivot towards that is going to require a fail fast, fail cheap, and a fail small mindset. You got to try. There is no prescriptive path towards kind of building that trust with your customers, which we talked about, right? Yeah. And creating value for them. It's going to come with a lot of let's try here and then pivot. But you gotta try that in a very rational manner as well. And thankfully, there is an immense amount of technology sophistication available for you to do those A/B testing playgrounds, right? So that's what I would say. I think customer centricity, platform scaling is an imperative, and culturally, innovation, fail small, cheap, fast is an imperative.
Awesome. Well, folks, you heard it from Nirny himself. Some amazing bits and golden nuggets of wisdom. Nirny, again, thank you so much for being able to come on. So look, you guys, if you found this content helpful for you, would you mind sharing it on social media or to your network? I'm just incredibly grateful when we know that we're making a difference. We can advance healthcare forward, and even more grateful when we can bring more innovators within the community to actually do. Because look, we're a community of doers, and that's really what it's all about. So thanks, Nirny. I'm looking forward to our next conversation.
Yeah, Michael, and if I can use your platform as a plug, we are hiring. We need it. We all know the year has been, right, from the great resignation and attrition. But really, I think we at Blue Cross, we have a very profound mission to improve the lives of our members. And we are on a very exciting curve with our digital journey. So, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. That's probably my most active channel. If you want to discuss any of these topics further, I'm deeply passionate about these topics I spoke to. So happy to continue the conversation there. But again, look out for a lot of the postings from Blue Cross across the country. So, we can start the conversation there. Thank you so much for having me here today, Michael.
No, it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. We'll see you soon.
Sounds good. Bye.
Bye.